How's it going, everyone? So today we are going to be taking a look at my portfolio, and I'm going to be talking about some of the companies that I am currently buying in the portfolio based off of how things are going in the market. And I want to just share these stocks that I'm going into a little bit more heavily on for these next few weeks. And this is just purely based off of the companies I'm holding in my portfolio. Now, I have 16 holdings in my overall account here for M1 Finance. And I have a video where I kind of go into depth with all the stocks that I have. You can see them right here on screen too. So you can check out those videos if you really want to kind of get a little bit more into the weeds with those ones. But the reason I want to share this is because from time to time, my portfolio goes up and down, obviously, but individual stocks, especially when you're investing in individual stocks, you're going to have certain ones that are, maybe performing poorly and some that are performing really well and some kind of in the middle. And so with my portfolio, you can see we're sitting at 125. And so there's been ups and downs in the market. You can see here in the chart. Actually, let me go into the last year because 2022 was definitely a really interesting year to be investing. So I was actually investing pretty heavily in 2022, even though the market consistently was going down. So I was putting in like $1,000 in a week, and that week the market went down $1,500. So it was just so interesting to throw money in and then, have that money essentially just keep the account, I would say, like a float. You can see here, it's around 70,000. 70,000 was kind of the average for most of 2022. And part of the reason I'm showing that is because it is really hard to invest when your stocks are down for the ones that you're holding. So if we go on like my holdings tab here, I'm going to go to unrealized gains. So obviously we have some companies in the green right now. But if we tap again, we're going to have some companies in the red, and some of them, like Square right now, or technically Block, they're actually down almost 40% overall on my unrealized gains. Now, to some people, that can be really frightening. That could be a time for them to want to sell. Obviously, depending on the performance of the company and where they're headed, some decisions have to be made. So you've got to really take in consideration doing extended research, which, by the way, getting into this, I actually use Seeking Alpha to get a lot of my information, my news, just things that I need to know when it comes to holding these companies that I have in my portfolio. You can see all the stocks that I have, all 16 right here. I highly recommend them. They do help sponsor the channel so I can keep making free content. So check out the link if you really like to. Check out more information and learn more about Seeking Alpha. But essentially, this is where I go in, get a lot of data information. I also use Qualtrum because they do actual information where I can see all the data points in real time, and I'm a visual learner. Some of it's cut off, but I'm a visual learner, so I do like to see these things as well too. So I kind of take both websites and kind of mesh them together when it comes to information. So when I decide on the companies that I want to be investing more in at any given time, I do really take in consideration where they are in their performance on a quarterly basis, as well as where they are with their actual stock price as well too. So I look at PE ratios, I listen to their quarterly earnings. I kind of figure out, are they overvalued, undervalued, or fair valued? And the nice thing is with Seeking Alpha, they have their 52-week range. And I don't use this as an end-all be-all, but this is kind of like my starting point. So what I'll do is I'll usually take a marker here. I'm not really exactly even, but I'll look at the companies that are above their 52-week high, or like on the right side of the 52-week high, which would be this side. And then look at the companies that are on the left side, which are on the lower end of their 52-week high. And what I'll try to consider is, okay, if this company, like for example, Discover Financial Services, they're on the lower side of their 52 weeks. Why is that? Is there something that they did? Is it something that's going on in the market? Obviously, they're in financials, and with SVB had gone through all their stuff recently, they've taken a huge hit. But is it their fundamentals that have changed, or has something else happened? And so I take that into consideration as a great viewing point to say, okay, this might be a company I want to be investing more in, even though I'm still technically in the green just by a little bit. But is it worth putting more money in now? My dollar cost average won't change a lot because of the price point. If I actually go into my portfolio here, you'll see my dollar cost average for them is 91.51, and they're at 92.85. So I'm fairly close to my average price. So buying more shares right now is not going to really change this. Not that that's a big deal, especially if I still see a lot of value in the company. And so this just kind of helps me get an idea of like, okay, these are the companies I want to be looking at. The ones on the right-hand side, are they starting to get a little overvalued? Maybe even start considering to sell some of the shares that I have if they're way overvalued. And that's happened a few times. Lockheed Martin is actually one of them in my portfolio, where I actually started selling a couple of the shares that I own, not the entire position, but I sold some of the shares because I felt like it started getting a little high in the value of the company. So once it goes down a little bit more, I'll probably start buying again. And I could be wrong as well too. So something to keep in mind, that it's hard to predict everything. You can't actually predict anything for the most part when it comes to this stuff. You can listen to earnings calls, you can pay attention to what's going on with the company with like news articles, and just kind of talking about, because we're here on Seeking Alpha, that's one of the other things I love, is I can actually go and see all the news articles all in one glance from all the companies that I have in my portfolio, which is really great. Just selling that again. But anyways, so let's go ahead and talk about the companies that I'm going to be buying and why. Obviously, why I'm buying them, I kind of just went over. I do a little bit more extended research on the back end outside of these videos, because for these videos, I just like to share what I'm doing, just to give like an idea. But right now, kind of like we talked about earlier with like Discover Financial, they're going to be one of the companies that I am buying a lot more into as of late, just because of everything going on with companies within the financial sector. So you can see I have companies like SoFi, Discover, and Ally getting a large chunk of some of the most recent buys. And this is just one purchase. I sometimes do 2 to 3 a week in the times when the market is a little bit more in the middle of kind of where my portfolio is. So I'm in the green by a little bit. So I've kind of slowed down on my purchasing, where in 2022, when my portfolio was going in the red pretty heavily, I was actually buying like a lot more because I just wanted to get all that value with those stock prices being very low. Now you can see there are a few other companies here on this list. We got like Home Depot. We also do have Square, which is, or Block, I keep saying Square. In the financial sector, we got Airbnb, and then we also got Amazon. And this is obviously a little bit of a smaller deposit. This is about $500 plus some dividends that got paid out. But if we go into our activities here and we go to trading, so you'll see here we've done a few little purchases. We did a large one back in March 13th. You can see here we did like Ally, SoFi, Amazon, and even Google. Now the interesting thing about Amazon and Google, I've been buying pretty heavily in them a few months ago, because you can see here when I purchased Google, they were about $90.27. If we look at it as of this recording, they're at $106. So within the span of just a few weeks, they've definitely increased their price. And not that they're not a good value, because they're still at a good value in my opinion with being at $106. They're just now not as much of a value as some of the other companies I have in my portfolio, because they are down. Like if we go back into the holdings, again, we're looking at Block, which is down 38%. And if I feel like this company is going to be able to return back to the price that either my average is, or where I feel like it's going to be able to go in the long term, this might be a better buy for me putting into Block versus something like Google, which will still have good returns, just maybe not as big of returns. And those are obviously risks that you're taking. That's part of investing. You're going to have to make sure you're doing your research, understanding, where your money is going to be best valued at, so that way you can get a great return. I don't think going one versus the other is going to be the biggest change in the world, but I think it's still going to be something where I can get additional value out of these companies. Now, same thing with like Ally. Right now I'm down about almost 19%. So I'm buying in pretty heavily with Ally just because it's a great price point for me. They also pay a nice dividend as well too. Even though I'm not like heavily focused on dividends, which is not the point of this video today, but it is something nice to consider, where we're getting like close to 4%, I believe, with Ally, if not maybe a little bit more. And then, considering like I said, with Google, I'm actually now in the positive with Google. I'll actually go back and kind of just showcase this too. So if we go here, if I type in like Google right over here, so you're going to see all my purchases with Google. So right now when I'm recording this, it's March 26th. So it's about 13 days since my last purchase of Google. And again, because they had a nice run up, I've kind of slowed down on buying, but you can see $100, $25, $50, $75, $300. These were price points where I felt very comfortable that I can be getting a really, really great return on this money putting it in now. And then at this time, I have other companies that I can be putting money into and getting a potentially better return. Because obviously, nobody knows exactly where any company is going to go on any given day. Obviously, long term, if you're paying attention to those quarterly earnings, paying attention to numbers, paying attention to the news with these companies can really kind of keep you in the know and give you better insight to make better decisions for your purchases as well too. So like, you can see here, February 9th, we did about $325 at $94.38, which was great. especially right now with it being at $106 as of this recording. Now, we kind of touched on it a little earlier, but the companies that we are going to be buying the most into from what we have in the portfolio is in the financials by far. This is where I feel like I'm going to be able to get the most value out of my dollar being put in right now versus some of the other companies I already have. Even if they are also in good pricing points, I believe that some of these companies are going to be the ones to get the most money in the next couple of weeks. And that can obviously change if they have a nice run up, similar to like how Google did. I might slow down, but you can see here we have like SoFi that we're going to be investing in. We have about 220 going in for our next buy. We got just a little bit going into Block right over here. We got about $40 going in here. And then we can see with Ally right now, we're getting another like $55 in here. We have about 180 shares, actually 181 shares. Definitely being able to lower down our average cost because it's trading at 24.22 and current average share price is 29.85. So that's gonna be nice. Then we also have Discover Financial Services right here. We have about 51 shares. Now you can see right over here, the average share price is 91.51 with the current price at 92.85. So very close, like we talked about earlier. And Discover's kind of had an interesting like run up several times where they've gone to about $115, $120 per share and has kind of dropped back down within this $90 price range. So this seems to kind of be its nice hover price point. And so for me, I kind of had a little bit of extra money going in when possible, especially when it gets close to that average share price. So we have a total cost of about $4,600 in this company. Ideally, we want to get this closer to $5,000. So we are constantly investing a little bit more when this price point is, in my opinion, a little depressed, especially because of everything going on. So I'm taking advantage where I can. It also has a very nice dividend yield of about 2.58. Again, I'm not really focused on the actual dividends today. Even though my portfolio is named Dividend Dentist, the goal with that is to get dividends down the road when I want to start using this money in about 13 to 14 years, which is partly why if you want to be following along, make sure you're subscribed to the channel, because one thing that I want to do is showcase my portfolio in real time, just kind of growing or, going down depending on how the market's doing and how it's performing. But, I want to get to, obviously over 100,000 was a huge goal for us. But the next one is to get to 200,000 plus, which hopefully we could do faster than it took us to get to 100,000, which was about 4 years. You can see here, we started out in January of 2019. And with this recording, we're about 4 years in already. So the goal is to get to 200,000 faster than we got to 100,000. And then hopefully one day we can get to 500,000 and hopefully even be able to showcase getting to $1 million on this portfolio. I think that would be really awesome for people to see in real time. It's nerve-wracking to even think about having this much money in one account, obviously, but as we keep growing and investing, hopefully you guys can join that journey. And what I'll do for you as well too is have any resources that I talked about here today in the show notes down below. They do of course support us out. So I'm going to toss a video right up here on screen if you'd like to learn more about the portfolio or even more about investing.